Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, which I actually filmed yesterday, doing the intro for it now, I'm going to be sharing with you how I take out the worm castings from one of my worm farms and also how I harvest the compost out of one of the compost tumblers. I thought I may as well just film what I was doing because I needed to do it anyway, and I thought some of you might be interested if you've never kind of seen these systems or how they work and what they actually produce for the garden. Now, a lot of you know that I love compost. I love talking about compost. Basically anything to do with compost I'm there for. So I thought I would just kind of sprinkle in another compost video into my series of videos and just, give you an update on how the system is working in my garden right now. So just for context, I have both worm farms and compost bins. I've done a lot of composting throughout my life, and I have been worm farming pretty much ever since I was 12 years old when we had worm farms at school, and I have loved it ever since. So I've pretty much always had a worm farm growing up, and they just produce some of the best fertilizer for the garden. We also have 2 cats, so we compost our cat waste. We have 3 worm farms right now, 2 of which we use for the pet waste, everything that the cats do in the kitty litter. We scoop out and we compost in the worm farms. Their kitty litter is also biodegradable, so I use that out on the garden, and I've spoken about this before and have a whole video for you if you're very worried about composting pet waste. Then go check out the video that is linked in the description box. But it's something that I really like to do. I like to be sustainable, control the cat waste that is produced rather than just putting it out into landfill and preventing the bins from just being really stinky, which, you know, we're not a fan of here. And it actually produces some really great worm castings. I don't use this on the garden, like where I'm growing edible plants or anything like that. I do apply common sense and I don't sprinkle it around the lettuce crops or anything like that, just in case there is a little bit of bacteria in there that I don't really want to be ingesting. So all of these worm castings go out onto things like fruit trees, the rainforest garden, and any kind of ornamental plants that I have. And we use a mixture of coffee grounds, food scraps, pet waste in those worm farms, and then have a separate worm farm which is just for food scraps as well. It's a little wrap up of the worm farm system. We also use the leachate from the worm farms or the worm tea that we dilute and give to fruit trees and ornamentals. And then the 2 compost tumblers that we have, this is where we put all of our food scraps. Pretty much all of that goes into these bins, along with some sort of carbon material, so sugarcane mulch, cardboard, newspaper, sticks, leaves, that kind of thing. And I have a whole video on how to set up this system as well, so I'll include that in the description box too. But yeah, I have really liked this system. It really works well for us. We move around a lot. We've lived in so many different houses, and I find that these systems are just the best, particularly if you're in a rental, particularly worm farms, because they're not even touching the ground. You can have them on a balcony, in a courtyard, wherever. They are one of my favorite things to have. And yeah, I thought I would just run you through how I take out the compost from each and what they actually look like. I can do another video in future on how I use it or the benefits of it, but we're going to just run through today the process of removing compost from both of the systems. Now, if you are a little bit squeamish or don't like worms or bugs or things that may come out of cat litter, then this video is definitely not for you. There is plenty other videos of flowers and beautiful plants, but yeah, I still wanted to do this video just to show you the reality of what actually feeds the plants in my garden. In my opinion, it is gold for the garden, and I just love seeing what worms can do and how they just transform waste into worm castings. It doesn't smell, it's not gross, it's perfectly neutral. So yeah, I really hope you enjoy this video and watch me harvest some compost. I know a lot of you love compost out there, so hopefully we can relate on that topic there. Alright, so this is my little compost setup here. I've got my compost tumblers and my worm farms. They're right next to the house, so whenever we have food scraps or we're composting pet waste, I can just come out here and dump whatever I need. I also just store some seedling trays out here. These are some very leggy cosmos that they really need to be potted up. They are germinated in a darker place, so that's why they're so leggy, as well as some dead seedling trays as well. Look, this area is just not taken care of as much as I would like it to be. As you can kind of see here, really disgusting bucket of water. This is just from some leachate from the worm farm. I need to clear it out and give the whole area a bit of a revamp. And I'm just going to tidy it all up, weed some of this area, and I'd really like to make it just a little bit nicer so that I can have a seat out here or a bench that I can overlook the garden and just enjoy the area a little bit more. So eventually I would like to move all of these, but for now we're just going to give it all a little bit of a tidy up. And one of those things is weeding. Having bricks is awesome, but just the weeds can be a really big problem. So I'm trying to get a little bit out of that. All right, the next slide is I'm opening up the worm farm. If you're squeamish about pet waste, maybe this video is just not for you. But this is one of the worm farms. This is a can of worms that I have, and this is the top compartment where I put all of the pet waste in, and food scraps and paper towels, everything you can see in there. I'm just lifting it up because the layer below that, I'm going to be harvesting all of the worm castings from this layer. Now, I've done a few other videos on this. I'll link it in the description box of how to do this, a lengthy process. It's really not that difficult, but for today I'm just doing this really quickly to get the job done. This is what it looks like after the worms have done their thing. It is absolute gold for the garden, even though a lot of this was pet waste and coffee grounds and food scraps. It doesn't look like that anymore. It does not smell at all, which I know a lot of people worry about, and the plants are going to love this. Now, I'm being careful though and just using gloves, and I'm not going to be putting any of this worm castings on any areas where I have food, just in case there is bacteria from the cat waste that I don't really want to be ingesting. So just use common sense with this. This by no means doesn't mean that you can't compost pet waste. So many people do it. It's a great way just to use up all of that waste and just be a little bit more sustainable with the waste. It also prevents your bin from absolutely stinking, which I am not a fan of at all. Now, there are a lot of worms in this layer. I'm not really worrying too much because I do have so many worms in this worm farm, and wherever I put these worm castings is going to be back down in the back area of the property where the rainforest garden is, so I would like some worms down there anyway. This is the very bottom layer, which is a little bit more wet and soggy. This is where a lot of the water pools, but worm castings also do fall through the little cracks and enter this area. So I'm just scooping some of that out, and any of the clumps that have a lot of worm castings, or that have a lot of worms, sorry, I'm going to then just save those and pop them into that active layer, which is then going to become our middle layer now. So this is then going to break down over the next few months and then become worm castings again. Now you can see this little gap here. You can see just it's a little too full, so you want it completely flush with no gaps. So I'm just removing a little bit of that layer and popping it into what will now be the top layer of the worm farm, just to make it flush, just to, you know, prevent bugs and mice and whatever might get into your worm farm into those cracks. And I find that after a while it does settle down a little bit, and yeah, this kind of gap is perfectly fine because it'll settle over time. So I'm just popping the top back on, and now this is ready to have food scraps and pet waste put into, and I have a whole few trays of this beautiful worm castings that I'm going to use on the garden. Worm castings is one of the highest nutrient fertilizers. It's really great because it's slow release and yeah, just has so many different nutrients for your garden and for your plants that I can do a whole other video on if you would like the benefits of worm castings. These are my two tumbleweed composters that this one has been sitting for a few months now, and it's all ready. So you can see it doesn't look completely broken down. There are also like some grass roots that were going up on the sides, those yellow kind of leaves. That's perfectly fine. I'm really not worried about that, but I do want to clean up this area a little bit, so I am just weeding some of the grass. This is the turner that I use for compost. The best thing in my opinion. It's super easy to use for these compost bins, just to add air into the compost. Again, I've done other videos on how to harvest compost from these tumblers and how to start one up as well, so I will have a whole few links in the description box. But yeah, I do like to keep the bases fairly clean, so I'm just tidying up this area, and I'm going to be taking out the compost from this one. I just use some tent pegs to weigh it down, just to make sure that no rats or mice get in, and this is the finished product. It absolutely is perfect in my opinion. It's perfectly imperfect, if you want to say. There's bits in there that haven't broken down, there's worms, there's activity, that's life, and that is the beauty of compost, that you're creating such a beautiful living thing that your plants are going to feed off. So this bin was completely full when I finished it off, and now you can see this is what you're left with. This is how much compost you get when you fill your bin up and you leave it for a few months and you fill it up again. It all decomposes into this beautiful, beautiful mixture that looks chunky and not broken down, but is filled with life. And this is the most important thing for your soil, is to add life and add things that need to be broken down, rather than always just adding in, those bagged composts, even, broken cutlery, like this was just a paper cutlery from something. It's really soft and will keep breaking down and eventually feed the plants. It's really important to just add living material back into your soil, because this is what the plants like. This is nature at its best. This is what happens when you have a rainforest and you have a rainforest floor. You're having years and years of leaves composting and decomposing. This is how brilliant soil is made. It's not perfect, or it doesn't look perfect, but it's what the plants want. And just to take all of this out, I'm going to just be using my garden fork, and I'm going to fill up this whole garden cart with absolute gold for the garden. Now you can see there are quite a lot of seeds and things sprouting in this mixture. Again, that's a good sign. That means that I know that this can actually grow things. But because of that, I'm not going to be putting all of this on the very top layer. I'm going to keep some in this area where it actually is and have the, in-ground benefits of a compost. I'll probably plant some tomatoes in this area, but whenever I do plant plants or plant veggies, I'll probably just add a sprinkle of this compost into the hole where I plant the plant, and that way all of the seeds or anything that might germinate is not going to get any light. It'll be below an existing plant and probably, hopefully, not germinate. So that's kind of how I like to use this compost. That way it directly feeds the plants that I'm planting, and isn't just going to sprout pumpkins everywhere, which is usually what happens when you use fresh compost. You get a lot of pumpkins or cucumbers, which is great, like I wouldn't mind that, but in my small little veggie patch area, that's not the goal right now. This is going to be where my new compost is going to be set up. But first I do need to cardboard the area, so I'm not doing that today, but I'm just popping it down here just to see what it's going to look like, plan the whole area, and that will be a job for a future day. But yeah, for this little area I'm going to plant some tomatoes probably. I have a lot, as you can see. And yeah, just work away on the garden jobs in the garden. I have so much that I want to share with you all. It's been challenging to film lately just because life has been really busy, but as you can see, this is an area that I'm going to completely transform. I have a lot to remove. I have a lot of places to use both this beautiful compost and the worm castings. So yeah, any videos that you would like to see in the future, please do let me know. And I really hope you enjoyed this short little video of just how to harvest some compost, create absolute gold for your garden. And I would love to know how you do composting. What's your favorite way of composting, and do you have any tips that you could share with us all? I'd love to know in the comments down below. If you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe for lots more content. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next one, happy gardening everyone. Bye.